The Prison Experience, After the Fire, Chapter 11. After the store fire, I continued to do my work and tried not to get any write-ups. From talking to the other inmates, I learned that the gym was one place for me to avoid due to inmates getting wrote up there, so I avoided going to the gym and only went to safer places like the chapel. During this time, Blackburn had a fill-in chapel guy, and one could go there and meditate and not be in fear of getting a write-up, so it was on my daily list of places to visit for a while. The MRT program classroom was also located in one of the chapel rooms. The chapel wasn't a bad place to visit during this time. I had no problems there. The funny thing was the bathroom. It was like a normal bathroom and even had a clear mirror that you could see yourself in. When I first saw myself in that mirror, it had been over 2 years before I got a good look at myself. Prison mirrors mounted on the wall looked like a shiny metal serving platter. Using one of them was difficult. The chapel bathroom is a little bit of normal that one could visit for a period of time. The chapel was very clean. The inmates worked there every day, keeping it clean and the floors shiny. The guards didn't visit there very much, so I spent some time there about every day. About halfway through the MRT program, word got to me about the masonry program. The instructor of the program had heard about me. Turns out that I sort of knew him. He was from the same area that I was. I remember his daughter, who was older than me, going to high school, and Sandy's niece's husband used to work for him building various things in Pike County. Somehow he ended up working as the masonry instructor at Blackburn. So after a while I inquired about signing up for the program. You have to have good scores in math and etc. to be considered for the program, so I started studying for a test at the education building there. I studied math and etc. for a number of weeks and took the test, passed, and got my scores up. The masonry program was a 10-month program, and when finished, a total of 6 months would be subtracted from my sentence. It took some time to get into the program. There are a limited number of inmates that are allowed in at one time. When a spot opened up, I got accepted. I didn't know a lot about masonry to start with. Turns out that it was one of the best programs that I did. I had to quit my job as a grievance aide at the library because masonry also counted as a job. It was 5 days a week for 10 months and included bookwork and hands-on brick and block construction. I learned some of the basics from the others who had been in the program longer than I had. We took a test every 2 weeks based upon our workbooks. The tests were actually pretty tough. You had to study the books, which I did every morning and when I had spare time on the weekends. Most every day we would be working on building a project, such as a wall, column, arc, and etc. The guys I worked with had skills. They built some really impressive projects. The masonry class was located inside a once fire department type building with a concrete floor and a high ceiling. We got to use various tools and learn tricks on how to build various structures. While working in masonry, I completed my MRT program, got my 90 days. I learned that one could become an MRT mentor, which is a 6-month program for 90 days, involving helping the new MRT members. I applied for it, and Miss Valentine approved it, so I became one of the MRT mentors. I had to do certain kind of book work and help with the others. Over this 10-month period of time, I worked my ass off, but I also reduced my sentence quite a bit. I was always working, so I stayed out of trouble. And seeing Miss V once a week wasn't bad, but she did expect you to do your assignment. I learned to never argue with her about anything, and I liked her shoes a lot. Seabay was working out fine. I had some good friends there. I still had to be careful around the guards. They did regular searches and pat-downs. I stayed out of the dorm as much as possible. That seemed to work out for the better. The weekends were not too bad. Most of the personnel were gone, and the guards seemed a little more relaxed. I spent the weekends walking the yard, listening to my radio, and sitting in a few of my favorite spots on the outside. I was doing okay at Blackburn so far. One of my biggest worries was my son Joe. Sometime after the store fire, something happened back at home. Roger and Rosie both had some medical problems. They both are up in age. I know that Joe could sometimes be a little hard to handle. He's young and has a communication problem. On one of the visits to his doctor, some sort of problem happened. The police were called, and Joe ended up removed from the custody of my parents, which was terrible news for me. The big problem with having a kid like Joe in the area where we lived is the lack of help. I had no one that I knew of to help with him. Mom and Dad was it, and I knew that due to their age, the problems were going to happen. I just never thought we'd lose custody of him. I've always tried to be a good dad for Joe, but the world is an unfair place, and just because I had a kid with a disability didn't mean that people in Pike County were any easier on me. You would think there would be local people to help in a bad situation like this. Not so. Joe and I had been on our own except for Mom and Dad ever since his mom passed away. I had no money to hire anyone. The insurance companies and the like turned a blind eye just like they always did. The attorneys and people who put me in prison were not concerned with my son's disability or the fact we got nothing for the car wreck his mom was in prior to her death. It was like, let's take from Barry, which seemed to be the thing that went on for years. Well, Barry doesn't have anything left to take from,